right, I'm here today with, I guess we could say we're friends. We met, we're acquaintances. um,
Yes, we are.
Mike Veny. Mike Veny, I was at a conference. I'm going to tell how we met. I was at a conference about 2 years ago. It was uh, we just talked about this, Transition Institute.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And mutual friend of ours, Jen Randall, um,
Good.
introduced us, and I'll tell you why, Mike. When I saw you, you were the keynote speaker there, and I saw that, and I thought, um, just the things that you said were really, they hit close to home for me for a lot of different reasons, and I thought, I've got to meet this guy. But the other part was, and I'll be honest, that you were a drummer, and I thought, okay, music. So
That's why you have me on today to talk music. Yay.
well, that may be another one altogether. We may do that at a different time. But yeah, no, I think, as you and I were talking before we started this, it's Mental Health Awareness Month as we're recording this now. As it comes out, it may not be, but it's always mental health awareness for you. And I have several people in my family that struggle with depression, with anxiety, a lot of different things, and so it's always that way for me as well. So let me start by asking you this: how did you get started in the advocacy part of mental health?
That's a great question. And thank you for asking that, because, I know many people that I meet that say, oh my God, I want to be an advocate for blank. I was never that person. Like, I never thought about being an advocate in any way. It's like I would see an advocate and I would run away from them. It's like, okay, you calm down, you. And it was in 2011, I had a breakdown. And for me, a mental health breakdown, I mean, they never look the same, and everyone is unique with whatever that means to them. But for me, I was, my emotions were just out of control, to the point where I experienced what they call a psychosis, where I just lose touch with reality. And I was starting to self-harm, and I was just verbally lashing out at people, and I became suicidal. And I reached out to someone that I had met years ago. It's kind of like you and I knowing each other. It's like, oh, wait, Cody, he works with advocacy. Let me give Cody a call. I think that's his name, right? So I called a woman that I knew named Cheryl, and Cheryl had met me years before. I knew she worked in mental health, and basically said, Cheryl, I'm struggling, and she's on the phone with me, and she goes, Mike Veny, what's up? And I said, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm in a bad place. I can't even imitate Cody how bad it was. Like, and I started to get angry with her because she was just like not focused on what was going on with me. And I started to think in my head, like, this is why people die by suicide. This is it. People don't listen. So at the end of the call, she said, can I hire you to be a speaker at my mental health conference? I'm thinking, no, I don't want to talk to those people. Well, the next day, she did what I call adult bullying, which is when you email somebody and CC a bunch of other people. And we've all been a part of that in some way, shape, or form. And she asked me to be a speaker. And I said, oh, geez, maybe I need to do this. So I put the date on my calendar, figured, you know what, I'll just do this, get it over with, And so I did it. I remember getting on stage and just crying. That's all I really remember, sharing my story. I got a standing ovation, and within a year, I was speaking around the country. And I realized that people had wanted to hear my story, even though I thought it was just my story. Like, who cares, It's something you keep private. For a lot of us, we want to keep stuff private, because we don't want people to know that blank, And so I started that way. And I said to myself, there's a time in life where, you can do things you want to do, or you can say, look, I have a certain set of gifts, and you have a choice whether or not to be a servant to the gifts. And I realized that for me, a gift was communication. And believe it or not, my own mental health challenges were sort of a gift in a way. And I had the opportunity to not have to suffer like I did. That's all I wanted. Just, I don't want people to suffer. So I became an advocate, and then I met you.
You talked about how you don't want to talk about it, and I want to mention this. You are, in addition to being an advocate, you're also an author. I'm going to throw this up here. This is your book. Is this the only one you got?
I have two actually,
Okay, that's what.
and yeah.
But it's transforming stigma, and so there is this huge stigma, and I think that's the biggest problem we have. And I may be wrong, but I think it's the biggest problem we have in mental health is that stigma that, if you have a mental health issue that, you shouldn't talk about it.
Well, take this moment right now, Cody. You got two men talking about mental health. Like, would you have had that 25 years ago? I don't know, but it's something that we have trouble with because we see it as a sign of weakness. And we live in this world that wants to impress each other. We want to put our best foot forward. And that's good advice in life, right? Like, show up and be professional, look your best. Good first impressions count, right? But we associate mental health challenges with a liability somehow in our head. It's a weakness. It's a default. It makes us less of a person. And I think one of the reasons for that, and I bring this up in the book, is that mental health challenges are confusing and frustrating. We can't just put it into a little bucket. When I hurt my wrist, I go, okay, let it rest, ice it. It's a sprain, strain, or broken wrist. Simple. Most people don't wake up and go, I'm depressed. I should talk to someone. Mental health challenges ultimately usually get discovered for you through someone else observing your behavior. And even then, it doesn't mean you're going to get the help that you need. And so they're very confusing. And I think that's one of the reasons for the stigma. The other reason, and I bring it up in the book, is what I call the law of the tribe. We're tribal people by nature, meaning we like our groups. We just talked about Jen Randall, our mutual friend. That's, in a sense, a group that, you and I are part of, the people that are in advocacy. And even though I'm in New York and you're in Oklahoma, I love my Oklahoma people. And so, and that's actually a perfect example. I consider myself part of your group in a way. And when kids are on a playground in kindergarten, you can observe them do a thing that we've all done. So you and I maybe have Nike sneakers on and someone else has Reeboks. The person with the Reeboks might get called the weird one. And kids do that. You're weird. They find out what is different about someone and they call them weird. And this is how we learn to feel actually a part of the group, by knowing who's not in the group. It's an important thing to socializing. But guess what? We bring that with us throughout life, Cody. And no one wants to be the outcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's and it's sad that that's the situation, because how many people could we help if we would look past some of that. And that's, I think in your book there was some interesting stuff. I want to get real quick though, before we get too far into the serious stuff. I want to talk about how you met your therapist. I think that story's funny.
I met my therapist, who I spoke to the other day. We're talking about 10 years ago now. I was in an elevator in New York City, and I have fairly wide shoulders. I don't know if you can see from here, but I have fairly wide shoulders. And in New York City, we've got small spaces. And so I'm on the elevator, and she gets on the elevator. Now, by the way, that's a whole separate episode for you. Conversations on elevators. This is awkward. You're in this tiny little box with a stranger, and it's like, do you talk? Do you look up? Like, that's its own other thing. But I'm on the elevator. I decided to just say hi, and I said hi, and she says hi. And I figured, I was going to try to be funny. I said, this building is sketchy. And she didn't find that funny. She said, I work here. And, in my mind, I'm like, and I said, what do you do? She said, I'm a therapist. I said, oh, I'm mentally ill. Can I have your business card? And it sounds like a joke, but she became my therapist that way because I put it out there. And it was a very affirming thing for me to do, to make it a comfortable subject. So case in point, if you and I go out to eat, which I hope to do the next time I'm near you in Oklahoma, guess what? If we talk about mental health, I'm going to talk about it in this voice. I'm not going to Cody, we should talk about depression right now. No. And when we talk about it in a low voice, we make it an awkward subject. But if you just talk about it normally, I think that's the important thing. I wanted to share something else. I think I might have put this in the book. There's one chapter, and but I put something like feel your boobies, something like that. I said to open the chapter, feel your boobies. And I actually opened a presentation like that once. I couldn't get the audience's attention, so I said, feel your boobies. And they all looked at me like, whoa. And I said, the Feel Your Boobies campaign is a breast cancer campaign. And breast cancer used to be called the Big C. No one used to talk about it. Nowadays, celebrities put pictures of their mastectomies online. And that's an important thing to remember, that as time goes on, things hopefully get better. And I'm hoping with time, we get to where breast cancer has gotten where we can just have a normal conversation about it and not in a low voice.
Yeah, that's a great point. But I always find that story a little bit funny, because it's like, hey, I'm mentally ill. How do you get a reaction on that one? So tell me about, let's kind of get into the series. I'm looking at my notes here. Let's talk about Friday, September 29th, 1989.
Whew. 1989, let's see. I think I remember that day. I was in 5th grade. I was 10 years old. And, I just said to you before, mental health challenges are confusing and frustrating. And I think that's important to keep in mind as I'm about to share about that day. When you're a kid, especially, you can't identify. So when you have a child who's struggling, you go, what's wrong? And they don't tell you. It's not like they're hiding something. These are confusing things to identify. Even those of us who are in advocacy have a hard time identifying what's going on, right? And so I basically, I had depression, and I didn't realize it was that at the time, but I knew I was sad and I wanted the pain to go away. And I got to the point where I got so sad I just wanted to end my life. I knew that would work. And so I went home from school and went into the medicine cabinet and took all my medication and tried to end my life because I just wanted the pain to go away. And my mom found me, and I'm grateful that she did. I was angry at the time because it's like, why can't you just let me die? And they, pumped my stomach, and my life is saved, and I'm here. So I'm grateful for her doing that. But at the time, I was just in a bad place. And for a lot of people out there, we get to a point where we are suffering so much, we just can't take it anymore. Someone is suffering and you can't see it. They could be smiling like this and quietly suffering inside. And for a lot of people, suicide is a solution to end the pain. That's all it really is. It's like, I just want a solution. That's it. I'm just done feeling this way. Please give me a solution. And the thing that I encourage people to do is realize that everyone has pain in life. Everyone does. Like, we all have stuff that causes us pain, but no one needs to suffer. And there's a huge difference between the two. And when we're suffering, that's what brings us to that bad place where we get to become, suicidal. So, whoop. Almost dropped my computer there. But thank you for asking about that. It's a day that I will always remember.
Well, and I think it's important to talk about, because as a parent, I want to ask you a question about that. And my son has, I think we've talked before, my son has autism, but with autism, we know comes other things. And so he has severe anxiety and depression has formed, over the last few years. Were there any signs? I mean, did you give any signs, is what I kind of mean, as to anybody? Did you have a plan, or was that a spur of the moment decision?
It was a plan in my head. I think we all have secret plans in our heads, right? That's how we kind of function in life, something we're plotting. Yeah, it was just in my mind. Maybe I had heard about it through other students at school, or who knows, in conversation, that people do that to end their life. But when it comes to being a young person, we all want to be loved. Doesn't matter who we are, what we struggle with, we all want to be loved. And sometimes, if I had to look back and bring up my parents, and I love my parents, my dad's still alive. I love my parents, and at the same time, I can say this with love, they weren't the most emotionally aware parents. And they did the best they could with my brother and I, but they didn't know how to process feelings or teach me to do that. So one thing I encourage parents to do is, when a parent tells me their child is struggling, I usually say to the parent, okay, you need therapy because it's a great way to actually get in touch with yourself to help your child. And I really feel like, honestly, had my mom and dad done that, I don't know if I'd be a mental health advocate at this point because I might have not struggled as much.
Yeah, that's a good point. We work with wraparound systems or systems of care, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but those systems that help the whole family, because you're not gonna, and this is again looking outside in, you're not gonna help a person who's struggling with mental health if you don't help those around him understand um, what they're going through. Would you agree to that? I mean,
Absolutely. I was actually looking up something about being a healer. Not a term I ever used, by the way. This is probably the first time I've ever said it. It was last night. You Google stuff at night, right? And so I looked up, people who are healers, and it was talking about how if you're a healer, the first lesson is to learn to heal yourself first so you can heal others. And I thought that was pretty powerful, and for me, what I noticed when I started really aggressively addressing my mental health, others started to notice around me. Others started to gravitate towards me. So when it comes to advocacy, a lot of times I think the 1980s were about the loudmouth advocate, just yell as loud as you can, or the angry advocate, right? And don't get me wrong, it has its place, but I think advocacy is about leading by example. And when we do that, we can really help others. So I really encourage anyone who's watching this, if you have someone in your life who's struggling, be the example for that person, whatever that means.
who were who were or are some of your mentors when it comes to advocacy work, or even things that you've learned, maybe to cope with some of your struggles?
Wow. Who are some of I have so many. First of all, I love that you asked that. I'm grateful. Just so much to talk about when we meet again on that. I'm a big believer in having mentors in your life. And I want to say something that might seem controversial, but I really believe it. I think it's more important for adults to have mentors than it is kids. We think somehow we hit 18 like we're good. Had my mentors growing up. No, we need them. And so I surround myself with, I have a business coach who helps me with discipline. The beautiful thing about my business coach, she's got a background in mental health. So when I want to talk about marketing, sometimes we're talking about my emotions. And it all goes hand in hand. Brene Brown has been a big influence on me because of her vulnerability and her work around vulnerability. She's been a really, really huge influence for me just on that. And believe it or not, Deepak Chopra has been an influence. And, self-help guy, but he has really been a living example of balance, and it's something that you can feel from his energy and kind of anything he touches, and it's something I want to strive for. I was actually just thinking about the other day. He's just so wholesome in how he goes about his life, and he's got a hectic travel schedule. I thought I had it bad. This man's like in a different country every day, and I think he's like 70 or something like that. So
Tell me, what's the best advice you've ever received as far as your mental health goes?
Two things, and they're very simple but so hard. One is to learn to sit with your feelings. We as a world run away from uncomfortable feelings. I mean, how many times have you heard, okay, I've got anxiety, I want it to go away, I don't know what to do. I've got depression, I want it to go away. Well, I had to learn that anxiety and depression aren't bad. We just don't like difficult emotions. And we run fast from them and escape through all sorts of things, whether that be gambling, substance misuse, sex, whatever it is. And when you address your issues head on and your feelings, something just changes within you. I can be depressed. I was depressed the other day, and my friend was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I'm depressed." "Okay, do you need anything?" I was like, "No, I'm just depressed. I'm okay with it. I can sit with it. I might go sit outside and just enjoy it. Let's enjoy the depression. Let it just, be there." So that is that has been a very important thing. The other one I'm going to bring up, and actually, it's actually good that we're doing this right now on Zoom because I think it relates to Zoom. There's a lot of people out there struggling with loneliness right now. And I've been sharing this in workshops, and please don't get freaked out, but I'll explain it as I do this. When you have video communication with someone like we're having right now, it's really important to take moments to actually just, so you're right here on the screen, but I'm going to look up into the camera. So it seems like I'm looking in your eyes, because in my mind, even though I'm looking into a camera, I'm picturing looking into your eyes, Cody, and just seeing your humanity. That's it. And just taking that moment to do that. I don't know if you felt something different by me doing that for a moment, but that is a great way to bond with people over Zoom. Now, please don't be weird and just stare like the whole time. That's that's gonna scare people. But going back to what you had asked about advice, I actually learned that for people in public, that when I interact with someone, to just take a moment to just look in their eyes and see their humanity. It's one of the best pieces of mental health advice I've ever gotten, because so many of us feel disconnected from others. So many people who struggle have had horrible family dynamics and never really understood what it meant to bond on a beautiful, loving human level. So those are the two pieces of advice.
Yeah, I think that's good. You talked about earlier, and I don't want to discount um, women's struggle with mental health. In fact, I've personally seen this firsthand. But when we talk about men, and you kind of brought this up earlier, it's not, we're taught to suppress your feelings. I mean, you don't tell people how you feel. That's what we were taught as a young kid, and if you do, maybe there's something wrong with you or something. And so I think it's interesting that you said that. Again, not at all
Yeah.
discounting anybody that's struggling, but the fact that maybe men have more of a stigma. I don't know. You kind of get what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. No, we're saying that, when it comes to men, and actually a lot of women would actually agree with us, I think. I could be speaking for them, and I apologize if I'm saying the wrong thing. But when it comes to men, you're right, that we're taught to man up. If you're sitting there crying, like, come on, get over it, you know, toughen up. And I actually think that has its place in life. Sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you need to pull up your bootstraps and go. We've all had to do that. But one of the things that I've learned, and I haven't fully been able to form this into words, so you get to watch me like practicing something before it's like even a presentation. I'm learning that the more that I sit with my feelings, my emotional side, the more comfortable in my masculinity I am. It's been real interesting. It's like the more I do this ugly, painful work, shed tears, the more comfortable in my masculinity I am. It's been a really interesting thing.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, if you haven't seen, if anybody has out there that's watching this hasn't seen, go to Mike Veny's YouTube channel and watch his discussion with depression. There is some language in there, but I think it's
Bleeped
appropriate.
out.
It's appropriate. I watched that and I thought this is brilliant, because it's you just kind of raw telling. I'll tell you what I tell a lot of people that I work with. I don't understand depression because I've never been there. I don't get it. It's not something that, and so I have to learn from other people. I have to learn from the Mike Veny's of the world, and some of the kids that I work with. So to me, to try to understand this, when I watched that video, I think that helped me understand that. So that was impressive. I just where did that come from?
Oh my, you have such great questions. Let me just say this before I go into that and forget. When it comes, and I love you for trying to understand those of us who struggle. And I just want to say this, that you and I might both struggle with depression, and I still don't get you, and you still don't get me. Everyone's experience is unique, but one thing we all understand as humans is what it means to go through a difficult time. And sometimes I remind people that, especially in the workplace, you don't have to throw it all out there like I do, But somebody asks you what's going on, you say, I'm just going through a difficult time. Everyone knows what that means at some level. And we can all kind of like bond as humans over that, especially during this pandemic. But the film was produced by OC87 Recovery Diaries, and the director, Glenn Holston, actually met with me a few times. At first, I'm skeptical. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do a film about this. And he was sitting at my dining room table with me, and I was just in a bad place mentally. Like part of me was grateful that he was there, and the other part of me was like, I'm not in a good place. I shouldn't be shooting a film. But he said, Mike, if I could give you something right now, what would I give you? And I said, I don't know. I'd love to just like interview my depression because it's so frustrating. He's like, really? He goes, can I ask you a favor? Can you put a chair over there? And he made me put two chairs next to each other. He goes, okay, just do me a favor. In one chair, be you and interview your depression. And in another chair, be your depression. This is all in my living room. So I did it. And oh my gosh, it was getting explosive in there. I had to stop. It was getting really intense. And so when we got to the studio, I suited up, and I had come with a list of questions for my depression. I had all these questions, and so I would ask the questions, and actually the director was sitting next to me as I was doing it, so I could look at someone, and he would just whisper, "I don't know the answer. Keep going," And then I switched outfits. I just switched into a different shirt, and the director asked me the same questions. And all I remember, Cody, was something snapped in me that day. Something just came out of me that was angry and frustrated with this. And I even remember out of the corner of my eye, the camera people like coming off their cameras going like, like something's going down here. And, this is not acting here. And after we were done, the director, Glenn Holston, he's so awesome. He basically said, Mike, why don't you go take a quick little walk? We're going to change some things, and we're going to get your drum, and we're going to play with your drum. So it was the perfect thing for me to calm me down. But I'm grateful for that interview, and I'll be honest with you. I look at it here and there, and every time I look at it, I learn something about myself from it. So it's a great tool for me.
I just I love it. So, but Mike, that's really all I have for you. I want to say that I appreciate first you taking the time to speak with me. I know you're kind of camping and you're trying to get away probably. I apologize for taking your time, but I appreciate it so
I
much.
appreciate you taking the time to hang with me. And actually, in closing, I just wanted to say one thing, because you brought up advocacy before, and there was just something I was thinking that I wanted to share. One definition of advocacy that I heard was going after your haters. And a lot of times we as advocates hang out with each other, right? We go to an event together, and we're like, it's an advocacy event. Not really. Advocacy is going around the people that don't want you around for whatever your cause is, whether that's disabilities, mental health, or whatever. And you can do that without being a jerk, going after your haters. You can do it with compassion and love. And one of the things that I enjoy about being an advocate is having some tough conversations with people who don't even think mental health challenges are real, and doing it with love and taking the time to listen to them as they listen to me. So I encourage those of you that are advocates out there to keep that in mind on your journey.
Great, thank you, and thank you for being an advocate. Again, for yourself, obviously, but for the people that I know. I mean, you advocate. I think that's what people don't understand is when we advocate, we're not just advocating for ourselves. We're working for a greater good, and I want to thank you so much for that. So,
Thank you.
all right, Mike. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
I'm